Yeah, so there tend to be certain common fears about self-compassion. Another that I remembered, I think maybe it was Laurent that mentioned this, was the fear that it will make us lazy, that we will not be able to motivate ourselves. Actually, it has been found that people that have high levels of self-compassion tend to be more motivated. Apart from anything else, if you have the ability to be able to support yourself when you're doing something difficult, something challenging, if you're able to uh, be a source of support and encouragement for yourself, then you're more likely to be able to face challenges. And well, compassion and self-compassion are about, they're not just about feeling good. It's not about, giving ourselves a nice feeling. It's about what is in our long-term interests. The Buddha used this phrase over and over again, that he realized that something was for his long-term well-being and happiness, or that something was not for his long-term well-being and happiness. And that is what compassion is about. It's about taking a long view about what is going to serve you, what is going to bring you a sense of satisfaction, a sense of well-being, and at times happiness. So it's not just about feeling good. So when we're looking at, say, a difficult task, or when we're looking at something difficult that we're going to be doing, something challenging that we're going to be doing, we can learn to support ourselves through that. And we can also keep in mind, this is going to be a benefit to me. So we're not just reacting to our immediate feelings about it in the present, like, oh, I have this sense of dread. I don't want to start this thing. I'm anxious about starting it. Maybe I'm going to fail. We're able to recognize those feelings and offer ourselves support as we're doing them, and bring into being, well, other feelings like, oh, I'm going to feel a sense of achievement when I've done this thing. I'm going to feel happy at having done it. And that creates a kind of a positive draw for us. And I haven't said what compassion is. And in a way, we have to go back a little bit, because compassion is it's a development of what you can call kindness. This is the way that Buddhism looks at compassion. It's about compassion is kindness meeting suffering. So kindness is metta. And often that's translated as loving kindness, but I don't find that particularly helpful as a translation. When I was first introduced to the metta bhavana practice, and it was talked about as the development of loving kindness, that was the first time in my life I had heard the word loving kindness. It's not an expression that people tend to use in everyday life unless they've been introduced to loving kindness practice, and that word creeps its way into the vocabulary. And hearing this word loving kindness for the first time and having to have it explained to me, it felt as if I was being asked to develop something new. I was being asked to create some new emotion or some new configuration of emotions, as if it was something that I'd never experienced before. It took me a long time to recognize that what I was trying to develop in loving kindness practice was just kindness. And that's something that's there all the time, or it's something that's potentially there all the time. It's a quality that we all have. So kindness is where we have an empathetic awareness of others as feeling beings. Okay, so pick somebody on the screen right now. Maybe you can see a whole bunch of people on the screen. Just pick somebody on the screen right now. Okay, so you got this being that's there. Just bear in mind that for this person's feelings, their happiness, their unhappiness, are as real to them as yours are to you. So sometimes you feel miserable. Sometimes you feel happy. That person is exactly the same. So right now, as you're looking at the image of that person, you can be aware that they have this inner world, that they have these currents of feeling, they have these sufferings, they have these hopes, they have joys, and that those are as real to them as yours are to you. They're as vivid to them as yours are to you. Their pain is as painful, their happiness is as pleasurable. Okay? So if we have this empathetic awareness of people as feeling beings and of essentially being the same as us, then it's kind of natural to want to behave toward them, to regard them in a way that supports their well-being. I mean, why? I mean, sorry, I'm picking on Craig Hadley right now. Craig, hi. You're the person that I'm looking at right now. Yeah. And I'm just aware that you have this inner life that you don't want to suffer, that you like it when you feel happy. And when I have that awareness in mind, I couldn't bring myself to say something consciously that would hurt you. I feel this desire to support your well-being. So, if I was talking to you face to face, I'd want to talk to you in a way that, well, I'm talking to you face to face, but I want to talk to you in a way that supports your well-being, that makes you feel valued as a human being, that makes you feel cared for, that makes you feel as if you matter. So that's what kindness is. It starts with this empathetic awareness of another person, just recognizing that their experience is just the same as yours, that they are a feeling being, just as you are a feeling being. And then it just naturally follows from that, that you want to support their well-being and you don't want to cause them to suffer. So that's what kindness is. And as I mentioned before, it's not about just like making somebody feel good right now. It's about their long-term happiness and well-being. So if I learn, for example, again, picking on Craig here, and I hope I'm not making you feel uncomfortable as a result of this. You're okay, good. If I learned that Craig, for example, had an addiction to social media or something like that, I wouldn't say, "Oh yeah, go on Facebook. Don't worry about it," because that makes him feel good about his addiction. I'd want to be aware of what's good for him in the long term, because addictions aren't good for us in the long term. So I'd want to engage with him in terms of, well, maybe how he could be happier in the future, not just how he can be happy right now by giving in, but how could he be happier by maybe overcoming this addiction or working with this addiction or finding ways around this addiction. So it's about long-term happiness and well-being. And compassion is simply where that empathetic awareness, that resonance that you have with somebody else, your awareness of them as a feeling being, is where that comes into contact with suffering. So now you want somebody to not suffer, but suffering is present. You want them to be happy. You want them to be at ease, but suffering is present. So what you want is, well, if you can, to get rid of that suffering. Compassion is an active quality. And it's not just a feeling, it's a desire. We often think of these qualities of metta, kindness, and karuna, compassion. We often think about them as feelings, but they're not feelings at all. They have feelings associated with them, but fundamentally they are desires. They are what Buddhism would call volitions. Volitions is an odd word, but it just means a desire, something that you want. So I want Craig and all beings here. I want you all to be happy. I want you all to be free from suffering. That's a desire. And my actions follow from those desires. So when you're suffering, if I can get rid of that suffering, maybe you're feeling ill at ease, and maybe I can, help put you at your ease. And maybe that suffering will go away. But sometimes that won't happen. Maybe you're sick. Maybe it's something incurable, um, that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. Well, I can't make that go away, but I can be a compassionate presence for you while you're going through that suffering. I can help be emotionally supportive to you, and maybe practically in some ways as well. So, karuna, compassion, is an active quality. It's not just a feeling, although feelings, as I said, are associated with it. And the activeness of compassion in Pali and Sanskrit, which are two languages that Buddhist texts are commonly found in, it's quite clear in those languages, because the word karana, which means compassion, comes from the verb karoti, which means to do. So it's right there in the word. It's a doing. It's an active supporting of somebody else. And it's not about being nice. It's not about. I think being nice is about wanting to be liked by another person, or wanting to show that we're a good person. I think that's a common trap that we fall into. And when people are talking about how they can be self-sacrificing, I think that's often the conditioning that's behind that. We've been conditioned to be nice, to show that we're good people. And the way that we do that is by sacrificing our own well-being for somebody else, or maybe even sacrificing their well-being, because maybe we're supporting bad habits that they have, becoming codependent. Pema Chodron, well, actually, she got it from her teacher, whose name I just can't remember at the moment. Who's the guy that wrote Spiritual Materialism?
Chogyam Trungpa.
Chogyam Trungpa, that's right. Chogyam Trungpa picked up on an expression that had been used by an earlier teacher and talked about idiot compassion. So idiot compassion is where we're trying to be compassionate. We think that being compassionate is a good thing, but actually what we're trying to do is to feel good about ourselves and to make other people feel good about us. So we're not acting for people's long-term well-being and happiness. We're doing things that make them feel good about us or make them feel good about themselves. So we're not trying to do that. And so compassion is about this response to suffering. Suffering is present, and we respond in a way that is empathetic and helps either help someone to free themselves from suffering or helps them to be with that suffering. And when we're helping someone to be with their suffering, what we're helping them to do is to not add additional suffering. So, we all have things that are going on in our lives that are painful from time to time. And then we add, as I mentioned, these extra layers, the second arrow. So when we're helping to support someone through a period of suffering, what we're trying to do is help them not to fire these second arrows at themselves. For example, if you're ill and you're on your own, it's like, oh, here I am, excuse me, here I am, I'm sick, which is unpleasant, and I'm on my own. Nobody cares about me. So if you're able to be present, just to remind somebody else that you care about them, it helps take away that second arrow of the nobody cares about me. I'm on my own. Sometimes the way we think about suffering kind of gets in the way of us being self-compassionate, because we don't think that our suffering is real suffering. We're aware that there is suffering out in the world. There are people whose homes are being bombed. There are people who, have had children dying. There are people who have who are homeless, or there are people who have terminal illnesses, that kind of thing. And we can kind of look at our own suffering and think, well, it's nothing in comparison to that, so it doesn't really matter. But it does. It impacts us. Your suffering is as real to you as somebody else's suffering is to them. It works both ways. A lot of our suffering is just this minor, fleeting stuff that just comes back over and over again. It's minor, it seems fleeting, but it keeps coming back over and over again. So if you're worrying what people think about you, maybe on a forum like this, you're saying something, or you're thinking about saying something, and you're worried, am I going to say the right thing? That is suffering. If you're frustrated, you're, I don't know, trying to get online and your connection is slow or something like that, that's suffering. It matters. If you're feeling embarrassed about something, if you're feeling resentful about something, if you're confused, if you're sad, if there are regrets in your life, these things come up over and over again. Little moments of boredom. Person sitting in the car, at the waiting to order their coffee, and there's this moment of boredom. That's real suffering. It is real. They pick up their phone to scroll through Facebook looking for satisfaction and not really finding it. That's suffering. Judging ourselves is suffering. Anytime we're angry, jealous, craving something, there's suffering there. And we dip in and out of suffering all the time. It happens to us over and over again through the day, and it takes a toll on our well-being. It kind of drags us down. So a large part of the purpose of self-compassion is not so much dealing with these major things that happen in our lives, although it can help there too. But it's just recognizing all of these little bumps and dents that we pick up as we go through life. It's like you're walking down the street and people were just like, jostling you, bumping into you with their briefcases or their umbrellas or their shopping bags or whatever. Just little kind of moments of suffering through the day. And a lot of the time what we need to do is just attend to those, notice here is a moment of suffering. How can I respond to that compassionately? And then when we do find ourselves having a more prolonged experience of suffering, like we have an illness, or we're going through some kind of long-term stress, or experiencing the isolation that a lot of us are going right now, we have the tools to be able to be more supportive toward ourselves. So it's those tools that we're going to be exploring, and I'm going to introduce you to a 4-step process for developing self-compassion that will help either with those little micro sufferings that we experience, or with those periods that we go through where there's more intense, more chronic suffering. Before I introduce this 4-step process, though, I want to introduce you to a tool that we'll be using. And again, it comes back to the eyes. So we're going to do a little meditation exercise. So there's going to be 2 things in this meditation exercise. There's going to be the practice of self-empathy, which is something we tend to forget about. And there's going to be a tool where we're regarding ourselves kindly. So essentially, we're going to be doing the first stage of the metta bhavana practice, the development of kindness. So again, we can just settle in to our meditation practice. And just bear in mind as you're doing this that kindness is never far away. Our own kindness is never far away. And in fact, if you are checking out your body as you're settling into your meditation posture, just be aware of what it would mean to sit with kindness. So the most obvious thing might be that we would be sitting at ease if we were sitting with kindness. We'd be letting go of unnecessary tensions. Just letting the body soften. And if there were tensions we found we couldn't let go of, we would, in kindness, just allow those to be there. And maybe we could find a way also, sitting with kindness, to regard pain, tension, not as enemies that we want to get rid of, but as friends that are having a hard time. So rather than tensing around about pain or tension, allowing there to be a sense of softness around those sensations. So if we're sitting with kindness, we would be sitting with softness, with acceptance, but we would also be sitting in a way that's open and upright and dignified. Because if we're being kind to ourselves, we're supporting our long-term well-being and happiness. And simply relaxing isn't enough. It's not all that we need. We need to sit upright with confidence, in a way that allows us to breathe freely, to have the heart open. And you can feel how with every in-breath, the body is reaching for this state of openness, uprightness, expansiveness. So all of this is kindness as well. So it's kind neither to get stuck in relaxation and softness, nor to get stuck in uprightness and openness, but to observe how those two things naturally alternate with each other. So we're being kind just by observing this alternation between the in-breathing and the out-breathing. Accepting change. Letting go of any holding on when we notice it. So now hopefully we're sitting with a little more kindness. And maybe some judgments come in. Am I being kind enough? Maybe I could be kinder. Maybe everyone else is kinder than I am. Just noticing those thoughts and recognizing they're not your enemy. They're just thoughts. You don't have to believe them. You can just allow them to arise and pass away. And I just invite you to become aware of the eyes again. Just checking in with them, letting them be soft, relaxed. And I just invite you to remember what it's like to look with love. What does it feel like in the eyes to look with love? And you can remember a specific experience of doing that. It could be an experience of looking at a child, looking at a lover, a friend, even a pet. Just noticing the qualities of kindness that arise in the eyes and elsewhere. Maybe qualities of warmth, tenderness, caring, openness. And just notice how, as you switch to being aware of your own being sitting here, the body, the movements of the body, feelings, thoughts, as you're aware of those things, you can be aware of them with the same qualities of kindness, of love. So you're regarding yourself with kind eyes. Aware of the movements of the breathing with kindness. Pleasurable and painful sensations and feelings. Regarding those with kindness. Thoughts that arise and pass away. Even if they're judging thoughts. Being aware of them with kind eyes. So far we've practiced sitting with kindness. And now sitting with kindly eyes, kind eyes, loving eyes. And next, let's just practice a little self-empathy. And by that, I mean, first of all, just recognizing that you are a feeling being. You may be experiencing feelings right now, but you can also bear in mind that there have been times that you have suffered. That there have been times that you've been intensely joyful, happy, at a sense of well-being. So you're a feeling being. Your joys and sufferings are real to you and they matter. Suffering isn't something usually that we want to be there long term. We'd rather be free from it. A sense of well-being, or maybe contentment or happiness or peace. That's usually something we welcome. Usually something we would like to experience more of. In fact, this is our deepest drive as living beings, as sentient beings, as feeling beings. To find peace and well-being and to be free from suffering. So just empathizing with yourself by recognizing that you have feelings, that you have desires regarding your feelings. But also empathizing with the fact that life isn't easy. You'd like to be at peace, to be at ease, to have a sense of well-being. But those things don't happen as often as you would like. You would like to be free from suffering, and yet all kinds of sufferings come and go all the time. Frustrations and anxieties and uncertainties, doubts, anger, frustration. So we're doing a difficult thing in being human, in having these desires to have peace and well-being, to be free from suffering, and yet finding that life often doesn't cooperate. So having empathized with yourself in this way, as a feeling being, as someone who's doing a difficult thing in being human, for the next few minutes, just offering yourself a sense of encouragement, kindness, by saying to yourself the kinds of phrases that we use in loving kindness meditation. Maybe things like, may I be happy. May I be at ease. May I be kind to myself and others. And regarding yourself with kindness, looking at yourself with kindness, with the inner eye of awareness as you're doing all this. The phrases that you're dropping in are an expression of kindness, of support, of encouragement. And then let's just call one other person to mind. And it's up to you. It could be a friend, relative, stranger, someone you have difficulty with. And just seeing if you can regard that person with kindly eyes, aware of the fact that they're a feeling being. Their feelings are as real to them as yours are to you. Their pain is as painful. Their joy is as joyful. And they don't want to suffer. They want to be at ease, to be at peace. Just like you. And just like you, they're doing a difficult thing in being human. We want happiness and we're not sure how to find it. We don't want to suffer and we're not sure how to stop creating suffering for ourselves. So maybe you can support them too in the same way that you supported yourself. May you be happy. May you be at ease. May you be kind to yourself and others. So those words are the expression of your kindness, of your empathy toward them. So maybe you can let go of the image of this other person and just relax back into sitting here, sitting with kindness. The body sitting dignified, upright, but also soft and at ease. Sitting, regarding yourself with kindly eyes. Becoming aware again of the space, the light, the sound that's around you. And just letting that awareness be permeated with kindness. Kindness permeating your awareness of yourself and your awareness of the world around you. And once again, when the bell rings in a minute or so, we're not bringing the practice to a close. We're just bringing our practice more fully into the world around us. So I'll just say a little bit about that practice. I mean, we did a number of things in there, and if we had more time, I might tease those out and maybe spend a bit more time just focusing on each of them in turn. So the first thing was, sitting with kindness, just bringing a sense of kindness into our bodies as we're sitting for meditation. And I'd mentioned kindness is never far away. And I hope you found it was possible to, bring a sense of kindness into the way you were sitting. And again, kindness is, it's not a feeling. I think often people are looking for a feeling. And kindness is it's a desire, it's a volition. And it's very easy to overlook those volitions and think that you don't have kindness if you think that kindness is a feeling and that feeling isn't there. The Buddha said something really interesting. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, He said that there's people that say that they don't have any love for themselves, they don't have any kindness for themselves. But if you look at what they're doing, they're taking care of themselves. He also said the opposite is true. There's people that say they're being kind to themselves, but when you look at what they're doing, they're actually not being kind at all. Yeah, they might be pursuing short-term pleasures, avoiding difficulties. So we might say that we don't have any kindness for ourselves, but we're doing things that are for our long-term happiness and well-being. So even if you don't feel kind, if you're just feeling your way into your body and you're recognizing, oh, there's a tension, I can let go of that, that's kindness. That is kindness. If you're realizing, as you're aware of the body, that you're slumped, that's compressing your breathing, compressing the heart, making you shrink in a way that in the long term is going to lead to you being tired or depressed. If you realize that that's happening and you allow the body to be upright, allow the body, not force it, but allow the body to be open and expansive, that's kindness. It doesn't matter whether you feel it or not. So it's really important to recognize the kindness that is there and not assume it's not there because you're looking for something else. So that was the first thing that we did, was sitting with kindness. And the second thing was kind eyes, kindly eyes. And again, I find the eyes really important in meditation. I always start out at the beginning of meditation, somewhere very near the beginning of meditation, being aware of the eyes. I said that soft eyes is my mantra, and actually it's usually soft eyes, kind eyes. I'll come back to that. I'll just drop that expression in over and over again through a period of meditation. Soft eyes, kind eyes, just as a reminder. And, I hope you found that the experience of remembering looking with love made it relatively easy to bring back that sense of care, kindness that we naturally have. Again, kindness is not far away, is rarely far away. And then again, with the eyes, just connecting with that sense of kindness in the eyes triggers a response inside of us, so that when we're aware internally of what's going on, the movements, the sensations, feelings, thoughts, it's relatively easy for most people, I think, to bring those qualities of care and kindness into the way that we're regarding ourselves. And one thing that I think is really important here, and this connects with what I said about kindness not being a feeling, is that kindness is not what we're looking for, it's how we look. Because when I was taught to do the Metta Bhavana practice, sometimes people would say things like, be aware of, joy in your heart or love in your heart or something like that. I was looking for love in my heart and it wasn't there. And sometimes, and I've seen this in other people as well, I would get quite kind of despairing and I would think that there was something wrong with me. And I would do the opposite of Metta Bhavana. Instead of cultivating kindness, I would be getting into self-criticism. So in this approach, instead of looking for kindness, what we're doing is we're looking with kindness. I find that a much easier approach, much more useful approach. And the next thing we did is really important. It's recognizing, first of all, empathizing, first of all, with the fact that we are feeling beings. It's empathizing with ourselves and empathizing with the existential situation that we're in. I love saying the word existential situation because it makes me feel really smart, bandying words like that around. But it's something very simple, really. Life is not easy. We would like to be happy. And a lot of the time we're not. We would like not to be suffering, and a lot of the time we are. And yet we have this deep desire to be free from suffering and to be at ease, to be happy. Those desires are frustrated a lot of the time. It's difficult, and it's not our fault. We didn't choose to have minds that are prone to unhappiness. We didn't choose to live in a world in which things don't turn out the way we would like them to turn out. So if we empathize with ourselves, if we develop this self-empathy, it provides a basis for metta, for kindness. And so the phrases that we're using are not attempts to create kindness. They're expressions of kindness. They're how we're supporting ourselves. We're talking to ourselves, saying, I want you to be well. Your well-being is important to me. I want you to be happy. Let's be kind. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's be kind to others. So we did that. So the practice of self-empathy leading to metta bhavana, cultivation of kindness. And then we turn that to another person and recognize that they're in exactly the same situation that we're in. So we empathize with them as a feeling being. We empathize with them as someone who is doing a difficult thing in being human. And the phrases again became a way of us expressing support for them. That is the perfect segue into just spending the last 10 minutes just saying a few words, and we'll do a little bit of practice as well, just in the last few minutes, about these four steps. So I'm going to take your example, Daniel, of maybe you're feeling a little bit blocked or something like that. You're doing a practice and you're not quite sure you're doing it right or whether it's working or whatever. Okay, you're doing that. Well, fundamentally, what's going on is you're suffering. There's an experience of suffering going on there. There's the experience of suffering that arises from wanting something to happen and not being sure whether it's happening, whether it's happening properly, whether you're doing it right, whether maybe there's something wrong with you. Now we're starting to get into the second arrow. You got that initial frustration and you are telling yourself a story about it. I'm not doing this right. I must be doing this wrong. Maybe I can't do it right. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm emotionally damaged, something like that. So we've got the first arrow, just the frustration. The second arrow, the story about it. Well, the first thing is recognize that you're suffering. Recognize that the suffering has arisen in that situation and that's okay. It's okay to suffer. It's normal to suffer. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a part of life. It's just what happens. And in fact, it's something you can learn from. So first of all, recognize the suffering. Secondly, and this happens almost simultaneously, drop the story. So if you've been telling yourself a story about, I'm not doing this right, maybe I can't do this, maybe there's something wrong with me, drop that story. And again, those two things can happen in the reverse order. Sometimes you realize you're telling yourself a story. This used to happen to me a lot in meditation. I'd be doing the metta bhavana practice or something, and I would realize I was sitting criticizing somebody. And then I would realize, oh, I'm in a critical story, and then realize, oh yeah, and I'm angry. So I would recognize the character of my thoughts before I recognize the feeling. So it can happen the other way around. You realize you're in a story, you drop it, and you realize that you're suffering. So it can happen that way. Doesn't matter. As long as you recognize the suffering and drop the story, and then you drop down into the body and you become aware, you turn toward the suffering. The suffering is always a feeling that's somewhere. Usually it's in the body. Maybe it's in the heart. Maybe it's in the gut. It doesn't particularly matter where it is. You just become aware of where it is. You accept it. You allow it to be there as a normal part of your experience. It's just a sensation. And we'll talk about this a lot more tomorrow, about the nature of feelings. This feeling is an internal sensation, an internally generated sensation. You become aware of it, but you're aware of the fact that it is a sign that there is a part of you that is suffering and that needs support. And then, lastly, you offer support. You offer kindness, you offer support to the part of you that is suffering. So 4 steps. Recognize the suffering. Drop the story that has been adding to that suffering. Drop down into the body and become aware of the pain, kind of internal communication from a part of you that is suffering, and then offer it support. So in Daniel's example, you're meditating, you're feeling a bit blocked, that feels unpleasant, you're not sure whether you're doing it right, that adds more unpleasantness. You realize you're telling yourself the story and that you're suffering. You drop the story, become aware of the feeling, and then you offer it support, you offer it kindness. So you allow it to be there, you regard it with kindly eyes. And sometimes you'll talk to it, put a hand on it, and you can use the meta phrases if you want. May you be well, may you be happy. You can talk to it in normal language. You can say things like, I know this is hard for you right now, but I'm here for you. I care about your well-being. I know you're suffering, and I just want you to know that I care. So you can talk to yourself in a very natural sort of a way. So this is a very simple 4-step process. Recognize that you're suffering, drop the story, drop down into the body to be aware of the discomfort, the pain that you're experiencing, and then offer it support. Very simple. And this can happen momentarily. You can do this. I do this, 65 miles an hour, driving down the interstate. Somebody cuts me off, and boom, there's this jolt. And usually, sometimes I wouldn't even notice that jolt in the past because I would just go straight into being angry. The anger is sort of like a defense mechanism. I drop the story and realize, yes, there's suffering here. I'm feeling jolted. I'm feeling afraid. It needs support. Okay, so you can do it like that in a moment, almost in a heartbeat. Or it could be a more long-term form of suffering. My sister's youngest child died about 3 years ago, and that just brings up this grief, and it's not a momentary thing. It's this grief that is present for weeks and months, as if part of your body has been ripped out. It's that kind of a pain, and so it's just there. Drop the story about it. Just experience the pain that's there. Experience the discomfort, and offer it support. Offer yourself support. So we're going to do that very, very briefly, just as an exercise, and then we're going to come back tomorrow and do more work on this and more exploration around about self-compassion, including understanding more about the nature of feelings. So just right now, just close your eyes. It's not a full meditation. It's just a little exercise. I just want you to remember something that has been emotionally upsetting for you in some way, maybe something that has made you anxious. Maybe your feelings have been hurt. Something simple from life. So just feeling your way into that situation, that memory. And then just recognizing that there is suffering present. This is a moment of suffering. Whether your feelings are hurt, whether you're afraid or anxious or despondent or whatever it is. Dropping any story that's round about that. Dropping down out of the mind into the body. Just noticing tenderly, where is that suffering in the body? What kind of feeling is it that's been evoked? And then offering it some support, as if it was a frightened child or a small animal that you were comforting. Just regarding it with kindly eyes. Maybe placing a hand on the place in the body where you feel that discomfort, that pain. And maybe just expressing in a few words some support, some encouragement, either in natural language or using the meta phrases. And then just coming back, bringing our attention into the world again. So it's a very simple process. Just these 4 steps. And sometimes there's a fifth thing that happens, but it's not a step you take. It's something that happens within you, something that unfolds within you. So, maybe a friend says something and you find it a little inconsiderate, a little hurtful, or maybe it just reminds you of some anxiety that you've got, and suddenly, you're in a slightly different world. And you do these steps. You recognize, oh, this is a moment of suffering. I'll drop the thoughts. Instead, drop down into the body. Be aware of this suffering that's arisen, and I'll offer it support. And when you've done that, you might find that there's a spontaneous response that then arises. And very often for me, what happens is that now that I have cultivated kindness and empathy and compassion for myself, I then feel it for the other person as well. And that's just something that happens. It's not something you do. It's not something that you make happen. So that might have felt like a little rushed in a way, but that's not a bad thing. Because what I want to emphasize is the fact that this is something that you can do, in a moment, in a heartbeat. It's just a question of remembering to take these steps, because so often we just get caught up in the story. Someone says something, it's hurtful. You start thinking about how they shouldn't have said this thing, how they don't care about you, what a terrible person they are. You start remembering all the other things that they've done in the past that upset you. And there's all this multiplication of your suffering going on. We get stuck in our stories. We get stuck in our heads. Instead, recognize, oh, this whole situation is suffering. Drop the story, notice the suffering, offer yourself some support. And the kindly eyes are really important there. The more you practice sitting with kindly eyes, the easier it is to just to immediately turn that upon an experience of suffering that's arising within you. And all the other ways that you can have of supporting yourself, which again we'll go into a bit more tomorrow. Touch can be very important, and the words that we use, the way we talk to ourselves, is important as well.